back up a raw data set as it is done. And again, you come back, you process it, and you archive. So there are so many technologies to protect your data, but the overall idea, like I said, is to ensure that you retain your data set and its integrity, and you make it available even if when the storage facility has been compromised. So you need to have a strong system that can be able to retrieve the integrity of the data even when it is compromised. So that's the idea, and there are several issues around the data protection, but the overall impression of the research community is that we still lack this data protection gap is still huge, and as a researcher, a PhD student, we have an opportunity here to try to think about data protection alongside our research activities. So we bring that culture of protecting our data as to this generation, because the studies have shown that the gap of data protection is still huge among the researchers. So there are so many issues, but I'll stop here and we shall discuss more during the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. We now give Mike a chance to take us through data confidentiality.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for your presentation. So I will be handling data confidentiality. And when it comes to confidentiality, we are talking of how safe is your data. So initially you start with the problem, you come up with a proposal or a protocol of your research. Then we go to the approval of your research by the ethical committee. Then before the approval, the committee would like to know how confidential, how will you keep the confidentiality of the information you get in the research. The confidentiality is not only on the research, but we also have programs dealing with HIV, where you have personal data, which also needs to be also kept confidential. So what is this confidentiality when we come to research? So this will be a way on how you agree, how you handle this data, how you store the data, and how you share your research data. As long as we do the research, we really want to protect our study participants, because once you give information about the participant, this one can be taken against the court of law. So it is very important that when we are collecting this data, we also maintain the confidentiality of these participants once. Like we say, like if you are dealing with a participant, you really don't give the name of the participant during the study. So that's the reason why we sometimes do the coding of the participants, and this corresponds to the name of that participant. So how now do we do the confidentiality of the data we get during our research? So we need to put some measures in place, and the most common one is we can use passwords for the data we collect when we are doing our research, so that it's password protected. Not everybody can come and get the information from our database, or nobody can come and maybe use the data for doing your publications without prior knowledge of other people, and so on and so on. It is also very important that you train your staff when it comes to issues to do with data security and how to do the data. Because initially you realize that when you are really doing a study, only limited people are allowed to get to know like the issues to do with the data, because we don't really allow outsiders to come and get to understand what is happening, or to get to have the access to the data, because this one should only be limited to the people who study, or the assigned people, or the people who are also doing the data. So it's very important also we come up with that policy on how surely, what is the policy of when we come to the data, so that there's a lot of confidentiality during this data. So how we bring this one is like you take your study teams, everybody is trained, this is how we do with your data, this is how we make sure our data is safe, and so on and so on. So in China, he said like when you develop a proposal and then you take to the for the approval by the scientific committee, these are issues that are addressed, and before you get to go to the field, they already know that now the study participants are safe, and also the data you collect to be safe as you go on and do the publications of your research findings. Thank you.
Thank you, Maida. We move to Omuhoza. I think that time we were introducing ourselves, she was not in, so maybe you could just give us tell us your name, your institutional affiliation, and then you take us to data privacy.
Thank you. My name is Omuhoza Teresa. I'm a research epidemiologist, and I am based at Cambridge. I am going to be taking you through data privacy, as my colleague said. So this panel, we are discussing data ownership. I will start with this statement. If you don't own your data, someone else owns it. And also a reminder that you are the custodian of your own data. And as we are discussing health data here, I have to claim I am not an expert in data privacy, that one. But what is it really we are talking about when we are talking about data privacy? It is the right to own and control your data, your personal sensitive information. So if we think about it, here what I want to do, as I said, because I am not the expert in data privacy, but I wanted to trigger insights, critical thinking about data privacy in our situation as researchers, but also as the intellect to protect our communities, nation, and our families, and ourselves. So data privacy, as my colleague says, it goes hand on hand with data security. And we need to have appropriate techniques to be able to deal with varieties of threats. Some of them they cited, like Asiko said about malwares, and then she also talked about, even if she's not experiencing like viruses, but also Emmanuel said something very critical about that. So for this purpose, we need to make sure that we have appropriate techniques that are protecting our data during storage, when they are in transit, and also in use. I know Jeffrey said something about the law. For example, each country in East African community, I know we have the law and the act drafted. All of the 6 countries, but I am not very sure how implemented they are. I know the case of Rwanda, just recently in October 2021, they gazetted the law related to the Act for Protection of Data. So you can imagine where we are in 2021, and then we are moving ahead from analog to the digital, era. So if we don't act faster, and then if we compare ourselves where others are, it is going to continue being a challenge for us. Currently, there is an increase in the threats for the digital, especially let's talk about digital health. And I think it's very, very complex. When I was reading about it, I noticed that the biggest challenge also coming, as you people said, the theft of data, the hacking of hospitals, the retrieving of information which should then have had to be accessed by a third party or someone else. So if you hack a hospital, that is, let's say for example in this scenario, if someone gets access to data related, let's say to the hospital owned by police, and then they get to retrieve you about the health information related to that sector, that will be challenging, someone can make a decision related to that. So the major challenges, we have to identify them and then also discuss them. But I will say that if we are moving forward, the audience maybe we are going to be identifying what are like the top 5, so we can note them down. I have seen that all of us, we talked about, there is something related also to culture, to not knowing the value of what you own, and also the policy. But we know that they are drafted, but how are they implemented to protect us? The lack of skills, which comes also to cybersecurity, because hospitals, they are going to digital era also. So the lack of skills to protect our health data, and in the end, maybe lack of funding and infrastructures. So let's talk about it and see how we can move forward. Over to you, Judy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let us give a clap to the panelists. So we open the floor to reactions. Panelists, kindly take notes. If there's any query directed to you, you'll be given some time to give a clarification or answer. So we open up to the floor. Yes?
Thank you.
I'll start with the last presenter. You started with a question that how do you know that the data you have is yours? Like, because we are now getting accustomed to using online data collection tools, and they store our data for us. ODK, Kobo Collect, and so your own point of view, since you prepared to talk about protection of our data, how confident are you that those online tools where we store our data, you have 5 surveys, they are all stored there. How confident are we that that is our data?
There's one, anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. During this presentation, I was a little bit confused because if you remember, there are some people presented us on how to use secondary data, which are already available on some website, as my colleague was saying. My question is, one of the presenters said, if you want really to protect data, you have to limit the access to some external use. And yet, we are researchers, sometimes don't have our own data. And maybe we are doing researchers, which has already been done. We can use the secondary data. So if we have to protect them, how are we going to use the data for the secondary use? Thank you.
Who is handling data protection? What is yours? Yes.
Thank you. My question is about the data protection and the data security. They say that there is a traditional data protection, and my question is about someone who saves data every day. He saves data on the email. I'm asking if that is a very good method to store the data, and if it is a good method, what is about security? Thank you.
Thank you. Mine is about data availability. I want to ask about availing data that are involving, let's say, I know the speakers talked about when we are thinking about availing data, we should also consider some aspects like privacy of the participant, and the values of the value of the data we are to avail for others to maybe to refer to or to use. But I wanted maybe to be guided on some type of data, especially related to qualitative data involving people sharing their experience, though you may consider not saying who said this or this, but again, the information that would be good to refer to when they are availed, yet they have been talking about people experience. So I want to ask when you want to avail your data, maybe at a given repository, related to qualitative data, what type of data, qualitative data that can be availed and what others cannot be availed? Thank you.
I think that is yours. Oh, that is good, isn't it? Or data availability.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Just a small question to data protection. In a case when now your data has been hacked, what are the steps forward? Because I'm sure, despite all these precautions, still issues can still happen. Probably with the advancement of technology, people can be still able to have your data. What steps should you take now to the legal steps, etc., to get your right?
Thank you. Let's address legal issues. Anybody else? So we give them some time to respond. Remember, you will have to say. You had like 3 or 4 questions. And then Teresa, yeah, you can.
The question asked about the data privacy from Kigali. So the thing is, from my personal view, that we are, we are naked, we are outside, all of us. Why? Because think about it, the technologies we are using, we don't, some of them, we don't even really understand what are they are collecting about us. So we are aware, for example, I just learned recently, you see Siri or Alexa, they started speaking Kinyarwanda. Some are speaking Gikuyu. So if you are sitting with your daughter and then she's talking to you about her private life, discussing, what she's experiencing and maybe related to her health, well, Siri is listening or Alexa is listening. So Alexa is collecting the information wrote in, someone else can translate those information and can, so are we really protected? No. So what I want to raise here is to understand that whatever technologies we are using, because we are moving from analog to digital era, we need at least to maximize as individuals, to raise the awareness that individuals own their data, whether it's health or financial or other related data. So you can be able to take steps and protect yourself. In that case, if you don't want Siri or whoever to correct your data, maybe if it's something sensitive, you need to switch off your phone and go and talk, or you need, or to be honest. So yeah, this is the situation we are in. Now when we come to research, those tools we are using to collect data for storage in transit, we need to pay attention when we are reading through the agreement we are having with them. And then make sure that you understand and be able to protect the data for, the data you are collecting. That's only my advice. And the second thing is, we need, as researchers, we need to start talking about the problem we are facing, work with engineers and developers to start develop tools which we, are trustworthy from our region. So we can say, oh, okay, this person, we know this company is a startup, is from this Kenya, is doing this. We can rely on them, and then we know exactly the regulations and the rules and the policy that are regulating them. Because regulating a company that is coming from United States or somewhere else is super challenging. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you, BARAZA. So we'll move to Lana.
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple of questions here to answer, and one is now you protect your data, so how about the use of secondary data? So I think we can agree that protection is not preventing utilization of data, but you make sure that you keep your data safe and retain the integrity of the data. So like yesterday we learned about the readily available data set online, like EHS programs. So that is protected. That's why you cannot freely access. So you have to go through the steps. So you create your account, they ask you a couple of questions, you respond. So they have the right to give you access or to deny based on your response. So you tell them what you are going to use their data for, and then they can say, no, our data set is not intended for your purpose, so they can deny access. So it's not like 100% protected, but it is limited, it is restricted, and so you can use it appropriately. So protection doesn't mean that we have limitations to access secondary data, no, but you have to use it according to the owner's like policy or intention. So you need to abide to what the owner wants you to do with this data. So the next was storing data on email. Is it good practice? Like Teresa said, that is not 100% secure because we don't own that email. So the owner of that email can do anything with the data you are storing there. So I think the long-term solution to that should be to develop our trusted like program where we can rely on. So it's like local solution. But also, like I pointed earlier, when we are talking about protection in general, so this external disk is the most recommended because of those issues of mistrust. So you send your data to a server that you don't own that server. So you don't trust 100% the owner of the server. So you can decide to though there is an agreement, but we are not 100% sure that it's going to abide to that. So that's why it is always advisable to have a storage facility that does not directly link to online like the system, so you'll be secure. So though you will run into the risk of maybe losing it, so that depends on how sensitive your data is. So the advice, the general advice is to store in multiple storage facilities. But yes, online storage is not secure 100%. The other question was, I think that is for someone else, qualitative data. Yeah, so you store your data, say on cloud storage and someone hide. So what are you going to do about it? So, so this is open for debate. I think if your data is being taken or it's been compromised, then I think there's not much you can do about it. If you cannot trace the responsible hacker, like the hacker, if you cannot get hold of the person, then I think I think that will be it will be the loss, because there is nothing, and that's a risk of using these technologies. So that is one of the major setbacks of is relying on the technologies to store data. But I think, I'm afraid there's not much we can do when our data is compromised by a third party. Yes, yes.
I wanted to add something on that because you said something critical. That's why we have to familiarize ourselves with the available policy in our countries, and then learn much more about what we can do legally if something happened. Even if, because I believe, I believe we, our government, if the policy in place they are implemented, we have the power to track the hackers, because there is if it's a crime. For example, they hack your database and you own maybe information about a community participant, whoever, and then you notice that there's something wrong. You can legally follow, trace them, and then with the cybersecurity expert, you can trace them and be able to legally follow them through, the structured systems that are in place. So it is more of raising awareness and learn about it. And I'm pretty sure that we are moving a little bit slowly in this region.
Thank you very much. The last question? So mine was not a question, but somebody was asking about sending data on email. Basically, I think by sending an email, that you can be able to monitor your database from wherever you are. And also, you can still send data on email, especially if it's encrypted. I mean, banks do that all the time. They send you statements on your email. But it is encrypted, it is a password protection. So there's a way that you can still send data to somebody else on email, but have it in a way that maybe it is encrypted, or somebody else maybe is not able to understand, when they look at the data. Like, for example, if I send you my Excel sheet, unless you really know what is what I'm looking at, it will be hard for you to say, oh, what is this data for? They're just numbers, and then there are numbers all over the place. Okay. So apart from that, I want to mention about Alexa. I have a friend who had Alexa in her house, and every time I was talking to the husband about, oh, you want to buy TV, then all of a sudden on Facebook pop-up adverts. What happens? There's a TV advert. On Instagram pop-up advertisement, So we are not, as what Teresa said, we are not, these things are not ours, but we use them. So we are not really 100% protected. I like the way my father never used to like using M-Pesa, but now, because it was, oh, can I put money in the phone? But now, we have to use these things all the time. You cannot say that you're 100% protected, yet you have a Gmail account. All the time you're on your WhatsApp, Google already knows where you are even right now. So sometimes it's hard to be like 100%, but I like the hardest idea that Emmanuel is talking about. I think that is like, it is not the safest because of viruses and malwares, but it's still better. For example, like for my data, I have it in a set of 4. There's the main computer, there's my laptop, there's a hardware, and then there's the cloud. There's only so much that you can do in terms of losing your data and protecting it and having it in duplicate. And then about the legal steps, what Teresa is saying, understanding policies. For example, in Kenya, we have what is called IPR issues, okay? Do you understand the IPR issues in your institute, in your country, etc.? And if somebody is taking your data, your information, maybe you've come up with something, what steps can you take in terms of legal issues? So you, as a scientist, I've realized that you have to be everything. You have to know how to write, you have to be a lawyer, you have to know how to read contracts, because you have to be a lawyer too. You have to be a marketer, because you have to market your data to get a grant. You have to be, it's everything. You have to be a data person, because you have to understand your data to talk to a statistician. So you have to understand the legal processes too, in terms of data. Yeah, and then apart from that, I think also the Plagiarism Act is working well for scientists now. Less scientists are now plagiarizing, but there are still some who still do it. There's still some who still do it, but it's because especially with the universities now putting in place that you cannot submit things that have been done in other universities, because they're able to check using different softwares. Although people still change a few words and you're able to do, But I think maybe it is helping also in terms of protection of our work. Thank you.
Thank you. So the issue on qualitative
data sharing or making protected data available. So first of all, we need to agree that data sharing should not compromise one's privacy. And you can also share qualitative data. So you need to identify the transcripts, but there are also issues when it comes to, before you get to collect your data and then to share it, you're going to ask for the ethical clearance. So when you ask for ethical clearance, your protocol will detail on how you're going to make your data available. And so the Research Ethics Committee will review your protocol, might either advise on how you can do it if they see that this information is high risk, or they might tell you that you cannot make this data publicly available. And then there's the issue of informed consent. So you need to let your participants know that you can't make this data available, and they need to agree. If they don't, you can't. But if they do, you need to find ways of minimizing risk and minimizing harm. And we want to share just the data as it is. You don't need to tell people where exactly you got this data from. You don't need to tell me only if I say this, you know? And we understand even when we're presenting qualitative data, you don't present names, you present with initials and maybe an age, if the age is a significant part of your research project. And we do also understand that not all data can be sufficiently identified. There are some direct and indirect identifiers that can bring you back to identify who this group was. So issues of ethnicity, issues of vulnerable groups, indigenous population. So in such situations, you really need to see the balance on what to put forward or what not to put forward. You may not share your data publicly, but you may put a quotation, if this is a paper, that this data is available upon request. So someone who really needs it, they can just contact you on an individual level, and then you can know how to exchange the information. And I think that was that. Unless this is not clear. Yes.
Thank you. I don't know whether there's anybody with any remarks before we close on it. Okay, go ahead.
It's just a comment, general comment. Yeah, when it comes about the data storage and when we consider like the genomic data, I'm talking about that because this is the data that I'm handling currently. So we have like from the technology, the equipment that we're using, they give you an access of a cloud, a part of the cloud that you can share data. And actually it goes there in a real time. As you are producing, it is being uploaded. So you store it there. To me, yes, it's a good way of storage, but then we'll have these people, they know the technology in and out, and we're just using the user interface. You know very little about it. And then like, as you produce your data, it is being stored there, and it will be there forever. Yes, it's a nice guarantee that you have your data all the time, but I think before we use this kind of technology, we should get time to understand, and even sometimes read terms and conditions. These people, they give a very long list, not like a document. And then at the end of the day, there's one button, agree. And then you click it and you say, okay, let my data be uploaded in the cloud. But I think perhaps when it comes to data, let us read that agreement, the terms. Sometimes they are really tricky, and until you get the consequences is when you come to realize that it was stated. So maybe we usually ignore that part very much, and in most of things, especially when we are signing up things online, like you just scroll up to the last page and you click the agree button, I agree button. So perhaps when it comes to data, or not even to data, anyway that we are supposed to read that terms, those terms, just go through, because currently there's a lot of things going on, and you may end up like, at the end of the day, it's like everyone said, it is your fault, you didn't read it. And they know that most people, especially us Africans, we don't have the culture of reading. They say if you want to hide an information from an African, just put it in writings. They won't see it. So maybe we change, we should be reading these terms and conditions. Thank you.
That is,
Just to add something on what Happiness has said, I think many of the problems that can be solved in our African setup is that we need to have our own systems and money and fund our own problems, fund our own research, fund our own databases, fund everything. But the problem is that we do not have the money to do that, and that hence why we keep on using things that we don't have access to. So just adding up that we need to start having our own money to solve our own problems. tell you something right now. Okay. So we have the cloud team, now that we're talking about cloud, and the online team. Is there anyone who wants to react? For the online team? So we don't have an online class yet?
Yeah, I was thinking of how we can get money, as she said. And I was thinking, if we can have our own East Africa online website where we can put data and we can retrieve data, we can protect as the DHS need, and maybe to retrieve the information someone can pay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby. Just tell us about that data availability. Yeah, so when I was going through, the challenge that I found was we don't really have platforms or regulations on how, as a country or as a region, we can make our data available. So I thought this might be a point of discussion on how can we make readily our data available for the interventions or for our own benefit, instead of just being shelf researchers. You just do your research for promotion reasons or for academic reasons, and you forget about it.
I'm hoping that has been captured with our opportunities. Anybody else? Let's just close on to suggestions. Yes, Robert.
I think Happiness said we have to click agree button. We will continue doing that until we have our own platforms. Otherwise, we have no other options. And the other thing is, in order to protect your data, I think you have to utilize it quickly. Otherwise, even for the international guidelines, you need to keep your data up to 5 years at once. So they know up to that time that data cannot be protected. So you need to utilize your data as quickly as possible to protect it.
Thank you. You want to say something?
Just to comment on what Ruby just mentioned, we have, like in Tanzania, we have EGA that regulates the ICT issues, and there are documents like ICT policy for the nation, and on it there are also issues on data. So it's also good to get time and get time to read or peruse on it. But also we have NBS, the Bureau of Statistics. They also have some documents that guide on the data issue. So there are times that we tend to forget about those things, and it gives us a challenge, and we feel like we don't have access to some of the information on that.
Thank you. I'm seeing a question from the cloud team. Ella is asking if EA, RXC has a portal where we can retrieve data from the region. Zaidi, you want to answer?
Yeah.
Dr. Noel, you wrap up for this session. You're almost here. Very much. As we wrap up this session on data ownership.
Yes, for the EHRC, we have the section where we put the data which have been agreed for some data, though not all, which are being agreed by the countries to be open.
So you might want to let them know. But I think it's also in our interest to also learn. So in the spirit of learning, I hope I've not closed on to anyone. Dr. You can close for us this session on data ownership. It's something we can start.
Thank you all the panelists. Have done a great job. Yeah, because our own data, it's something that really values yourself. And in our East African community, we need that so that at the end we don't, because wherever we are sending, sometimes we may even end up going back and we buy even at the higher cost. Also even sending them, repositing our data there, yeah, it's not for free of charge. So raising this issue, it elucidates our minds so we can come up with new ideas that can help us improve and lead us to a better future as we are young scientists. Thank you for your contribution. Then we move on to the other session. Thank you.
Thank you. So we break for tea. Let's give a round of applause to the team.